So here we are in government-enforced hotel quarantine. How did we end up here? Well, before I get into that, I just want to skip forward a little because... So, our welcoming party at the hotel. And there we are, getting out of the van, cops there with a mask, we've got our masks on, got our bags, walking through the parking lot when what are we met by? A stone curlew. All propped up like this, just like, what you doing in my area, boys? But it was a bit more like, you know, the best way to describe this is if you literally Google Queensland screaming bird, the first thing to come up is the stone curlew. Let's set the scene. It's the middle of the night. You're awoken. You don't know what it is that woke you up, but all of a sudden, in the distance of the darkness, deep within it, you hear a screaming lady. Well, that sound, or the only other sound it can make, is like when you get a recorder and you just blow into it as hard as you can. Those are the two sounds that this weird bird makes. How did we end up here? So there we were, living in the van, like pretty much all of you know because I just keep jamming it down everyone's throat that we're living the van life. We were on a little island, that's right, an island, far away from where the current lockdowns and breakouts were happening in Australia. We're on Magnetic Island, enjoying ourselves, loving the summer temperature in winter. So, goodbye Magnetic Island, and thanks for the tropical good times whilst in the middle of winter. Jade and I started heading up to Cairns because we had a flight to catch because we had a wedding to get to. As we're heading up, we start hearing the news that Townsville is going into lockdown. Thank goodness we had just gotten out of there. So we kept a close eye on the news and we kept having a look at the government websites. When what did we find out? One of these people with COVID had been to Magnetic Island. Not only had they been there, but they had gone to a restaurant. And not only had they gone to the restaurant on the same day as us, they literally went at the exact same time. Seems as hard as we had tried to outrun COVID, it had found us. So we immediately looked at what we needed to do. He said we needed to get tested immediately. So we drove straight to the closest testing site, got tested. That was my first time getting that test. It was like a massive chopstick being stuck. Well, first they started in your mouth. Thank goodness they didn't go nose to mouth. They went mouth to nose. And then after they had swabbed around at the back of my throat, they stuck it at the back of my nose, almost touching my brain.
Tickle a little bit. 1 tickle, 2 tickle, 3 tickle. Okay, done.
Next step after that, contact tracing. Make sure that the government knows you were there. So we did all of that online. Then we had to go into isolation. This gets a little harder when you live in a van that just has a bed. There was no kitchen, we had no food, we had no toilet. So we just pulled over in an isolated area and just got inside the van. Not long later, we got our COVID results, likely the very next day, both negative. Thank goodness this would have been a different experience if it had said anything else. After that, we get in contact by a few different departments, but they told us that we needed to go into hotel quarantine immediately. We had 2 hours to get there, which was sufficient time, but if we weren't there within those 2 hours, the police would be after us. And they said this so politely but firmly. So we didn't muck around. We've come from Victoria. We know what all of this is about. Lockdown's just another thing for us. So we made our way there and here we are now in hotel quarantine. I mean, what honeymoon would be complete without government-enforced hotel quarantine? It's been interesting. But I'll tell you what, from everything we've seen these last 18 months, it seems the Queensland government is doing their best to not make the same mistakes that other states have experienced with their hotel quarantine endeavours. The experience so far has been a good one. So, fast forward, back forward, back forward, fast forward. We've just gotten past the stone curlew in the parking lot. The police brings us to the front, and when we get there, this hotel is set up for quarantine. kind of obvious. But the security there is not just any kind of old security, it's the police, which is good. They're fully kitted out with their masks and everything is safe. We've got ours. We move up to the first one and they just take us through the rigmarole explaining, do you understand what you're doing here? What is your name? And these are the procedures that we're going through. And this is what's going to be happening. They were very concise, they were very clear, they were very kind at the same time. Not only at the front were the police there to be the security, but there were also nurses on site. So they don't just have any old random people running around the hotel. There were qualified nurses there. So if at any point we did develop symptoms, we could contact them immediately and they were right there. We went up to our room. It's not that bad of a room. Like, it could be worse. And I've got some pretty good company. I've got my wife here. The very next day, after we had entered the room and we're enjoying our absolute isolation after spending 3 months outside in nature, I kind of miss the outside. Got to do what we got to do. Remember, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We have to look after those most vulnerable. So we've got to think of everyone and not just ourselves. So the very next day, I had my second COVID test. That was another experience of having a massive chopstick shoved in my face holes. All we have to do is quarantine for 14 days from our exposure time. Then once that's all done, and we have another COVID test to ensure, so this will be 3 all up, then we are allowed to be released back into the wild. Do you have any questions? Yeah, this is a bit of a weird one to bring. Going through all these van life videos and now here we are in hotel quarantine. What would you like to know? Let me know in the comments below. This is a new experience for all of us. And why don't we experience it a little together? Well, thanks for watching. I'm not going anywhere far, honestly. I've got just a tiny room out there. I'm actually in the bathroom right now. Yeah. Well, could be worse. I'll catch you guys. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Virus.